traveled to Florida. We were in New York. We lived in New York, my son and I, and my best friend, who's disabled, that I help take care of, and she's also my business partner. And my son lived. His father was from Massachusetts, and we did a back and forth thing for a very long time. And for a whole year, it was horrible. When he was 2 years old, it was awful for him. And he would get to the point, like, he would beg me to go anywhere and then have to go to his
I
father's house. And I
don't
was like,
understand people who make kids go across state lines. It baffles me. I
4 hours.
know her who has that situation, and she's nursing, and the father was allowed to take this baby who's nursing across state lines for longer than the original agreement, even, and she almost lost her milk. It's like, how is this
Right.
helpful
And
to
anyway,
anyone in this situation? I don't understand. But yeah,
it's terrible. Yeah. So that's so what I ended up learning was, because I took my son to Florida. We were going to go on a little extended vacation through the winter and go down to Florida. My grandmother was very old. She was like 95 at the time. So we wanted to make sure that she got to meet my son before she would pass. And so we did that. And on our way back up, we ended up getting stuck there for 120 days, which we weren't really expecting to stay that long. But it was really nasty that year in the Northeast. I mean, they literally had icebergs melting still in July in Boston.
wow.
So it was terrible. So we didn't care. But when we were coming back up to New York, I was in Valdosta, Georgia, and we stopped at a Chick-fil-A to get breakfast. And I was met by police. And they asked me my name, started asking me questions about who I was, and um, that kind of thing. And all of a sudden, I was in handcuffs, and my son was being taken from the playroom, and I've not seen him since that day.
Hi, it's Tiffany Lorraine Galloway, certified high performance coach, with another episode of the Resilient Mother podcast. Today, quite a story about a mother's love for her child and the difficulties she's faced in being able to share that and to keep custody of her child. Siannon is here to share her story. And as you can see already, there's been some tears. So I'm going to just tell you right now to go get a box of tissues, because this is quite a story that we're sharing here, and just be ready for what we're going to share here today. Can you tell us, just do a little intro about you? Thank you for being here. And
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Siannon Lee, and I'm a transformational longevity health coach. I've worked with people for a very long time, over 20 years actually, on helping them with their autoimmune system. Actually, I was a Gulf War veteran, and I had suffered from Gulf War illness back from the first Gulf War. And those basically is a combination of pretty much every autoimmune condition you can think of, kind of wrapped up in one. So it's chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, IBS, insomnia, post-traumatic stress and anxiety, and all these different things, right? And so, but I healed myself within about 90 days when I actually took a job with a company that was Ayurvedic medicine. And so that was back in 1998. And after 5 years of misery, it took me less than 90 days actually of taking their products, pharmaceutical strength, and it reversed like 95% of my symptoms. So it was amazing. Yeah. And but I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. And so I didn't know that actually there was such a thing called Gulf War illness until 20 years later, when a guy named Ranger, Health Ranger, he's an ex-Army Ranger, and he had did a report about it. And I was like, what's he talking about? And so then I realized, like, wow, I'm not the only one that had these, and there was actually a name for it. And so, like, there's about 400,000 veterans that actually still suffer from Gulf War illness today. So I actually try to make it is my mission to, get on podcasts, talk to veterans, and let them know, that they don't have to suffer through that there are natural ways to heal, and not just have to take pharmaceuticals and just wait and be in misery. So that's how I started. And then I kind of kept going from there, and just, learning everything that I could, just soaking it in, picking up the body, and learning how to reverse chronic illness in a natural way.
well, and if that wasn't just an incredible story in and of itself.
Yeah.
You also had quite the situation happen when you took your son on a trip to Florida.
Right. Yeah. Well, and so
And so
having
then
said
I'm going
that,
to cut and go back to where you shared that.
okay.
We
That's
already did that. Yeah.
intro, and it's the reason that I was able to get through that, what I was able to get through, because I was strong. You know, I was strong in my body and I was strong in my mind. And if I hadn't been, I wouldn't have been able to get through that with my son. And that's kind of the message that I say, like, prioritize yourself. And that's what I mean by that. So if you want me to cut to say, here's what happened, you know, when I had my son, in a nutshell, I was going through a custody battle with my son's father. We were not married and we were sharing custody. And then my son came home one time at the end of September, early October, and he told me that his father was abusing him in a very inappropriate way. Not that there's any appropriate way to abuse him, but even less appropriate than any appropriate way of being abused. So, which was shocking to hear from a little over 2.5-year-old child.
Wow.
He's a baby. He's a baby.
Mm.
So I went immediately to the judge. We lived in New York. His father lived in Massachusetts, and we were going across state lines. And I went immediately to a judge to get emergency protective order for him, which the judge gave me immediately. I didn't even have to see the judge. We didn't even go in front of him. He just gave it to me because we'd been a year late prior. He gave it to me because he had come home doing some weird stuff. And I was like, what's going on? Like, it's just weird. And so he gave it to me. And then within that 30 days, it was around Thanksgiving and Christmas, about this time, we decided that we would take a trip down south to Florida to kind of just get away from the stress of it, because he was really stressed out. And so I just wanted to take him away from the situation. And then within that 30 days, the state of Massachusetts took custody of my son without my knowledge and put an arrest warrant on me for parental kidnapping.
Yeah. Wow. And it's just mind blowing. That part of your story is just mind blowing.
The things like that I really, like I mentioned in my thing, there's something that that women don't know. And this was the hard thing that I had to learn. And I know you might not know it either. So, which is to say that when I lost my son, I had full custody of my son. We were never married. I had full legal and physical custody of my son because his father was under investigation for abuse. And so it was actually about this time of the year. So makes it that much more challenging. So we traveled to Florida. We were in New York. We lived in New York, my son and I, and my best friend, who's disabled, that I help take care of, and she's also my business partner. And my his father was from Massachusetts, and we did a back and forth thing for a very long time. And for a whole year, it was horrible. When he was 2 years old, it was awful for him. And he would get to the point, like, he would beg me to go anywhere and then have to go to his father's house.
I was like, understand people who make kids go across state lines. It baffles me.
4 hours.
Who has that situation, and she's nursing, and the father was allowed to take this baby who's nursing across state lines for longer than the original agreement, even, and she almost lost her milk. It's like, how is this
right?
And anyone in this situation? I don't understand. But yeah,
it's terrible. Yeah, so that's so what I ended up learning was, because I took my son to Florida. We were going to go on a little extended vacation through the winter and go down to Florida. My grandmother was very old. She was like 95 at the time, so we wanted to make sure that she got to meet my son before she would pass. And so we did that, and on our way back up, we ended up getting stuck there for 120 days, which we weren't really expecting to stay that long. But it was really nasty that year in the Northeast. I mean, they literally had icebergs melting still in July in Boston.
Wow.
So it was terrible. So we didn't care. But when we were coming back up to New York, I was in Valdosta, Georgia, and we stopped at a Chick-fil-A to get breakfast. And I was met by police, and they asked me my name, started asking me questions about who I was, and that kind of thing. And all of a sudden, I was in handcuffs, and my son was being taken from the playroom, and I've not seen him since that day.
How? Why? What?
Right. How does that happen? So here's how that happened. And this is what I wanted to share with people so that they understand that the state owns your children before you own your children. And in your case, because you were married, the husband owns you and he owns the children before you own anything. Women still do not own anything, technically. And even if they're single, the state owns the children before you do. And that's every state in this United States of America. And I say that, and I found that out because when I learned that all these quote unquote laws that we have, so the temple bars, the lawyers, their first duty is to the court. We don't know what we don't know. And what I found out from my experience by having my son legally trafficked from me, basically. So the state of Massachusetts, I had an emergency protective order in New York State. The judge, who was only a custody judge in Massachusetts, called the judge in New York. And he said, I have exclusive jurisdiction over this custody case. I'll make sure that those abuse allegations get investigated if you'll vacate the order. That was 30 days, within 30 days after he gave me the order. But of course I was traveling, so I never got that information, right? And even if I had, their due process would say they have to hand you that notification so that you know that there was a change in custody. And so the judge in New York vacated the order. And then the judge in Massachusetts put in custody. They took custody of my son, and they put in for a missing persons report. And because too much time had gone by, they couldn't put in like an atom alert. Too much time had gone by and the circumstances didn't fit. But they put in a missing persons report, and then they put a federal warrant of arrest, of my arrest.
So you're gone, and all these things are happening. There's no way to get a hold of you. You don't know these legal things are happening or changing at all.
No clue. Yeah, no clue. And so, so that day was March 3rd, 2015. March 3rd, March 2nd. And and so.
And how old was your child?
He was 3 years and 3 months old.
3 years old. Taken from his mom, and you haven't seen him since.
Never seen him since. Haven't even talked to him.
And
haven't even talked to him. Oh, he's been with his father since day one. Day one. They never investigated any kind of abuse. Oh, did you abuse him? No. Okay. All right, good. But you have to understand this system, where he's from, who his family was and is, and everything that was surrounding it. It was stacked against me. But sorry, I just dropped that screen. But I didn't know what I didn't know. And so what I found out was just that. Number one, so if the father, who is claimed as the father, really wants the children, then he'll get the children, unless he's like in jail and a drug dealer, that kind of thing. Then they don't have any choice. But I mean, you really have to, like, they're gonna watch you.
Really, just to focus on your story, what happened, so people are informed. But any opinions about presidents or politics or the government, if we could leave that out,
so people do
I
need to
know the father just during COVID took advantage of COVID to kind of take himself out of the picture, make up a whole lot of stories. And then I got an attorney right away when I caught on to what I had tried to get myself out of a little too late, being 12-week pregnant. And the attorneys were kind of surprised I was getting an attorney already. Aren't you going to wait till the child's born and all this stuff? I'm like, I knew the situation I was dealing with. I was going to need to know exactly what my legal rights were and what I could and could not do, and be ready for whatever. And so I'm really glad that I did that. However, I had a very difficult time finding an attorney that was really on my side, to the point that the judge finally gave the order. He actually, and I didn't catch on to this right away, and I wish I had said that that attorney was not allowed to work with me anymore. And so he gave me to one within his group, me not realizing what had actually been in the order, because I'm dealing with all sorts of things with COVID and birth and stuff by myself. So I was taken advantage of. It still worked out mostly in my favor, but I had an opportunity to ask for way more than what I got. But I was not informed that the judge had left it open to me because the dad had done nothing, his attorney had not done his responsible part of being a part of the conversation. So I was left with what I was left with, which is more than most, but it still left out childcare. It still left out medical being covered the way it needed to. So now I'm a college graduate, and I have the complication of trying to figure out more payment when that is supposed to be being partially covered by the father. But the way that it was done, because it's a percentage, they won't enforce it. And now some laws have changed in the original state where they're not even going to include what's there. So that either forces me to go back to court or to try to move things to the new state that I'm in that will cover that. But I still have to go back and get it to be a number. And I have to prove what childcare costs, because childcare changes. So the percentage thought is, well, childcare costs are going to change, so let's make it a percentage. But then the law states that there's no way to enforce a percentage. It has to be a set dollar amount in order to be collected. And so there just definitely are some things that when a woman faces divorce, custody, any legal thing, get an attorney. Don't mess around. Get an attorney. But also research a really good one. And I will say some states are better than others. So I have attorneys in different states. In Utah, it's about doing a good job, doing it efficiently, get more cases. In states that are slower, no offense to Idaho, Montana, but some states where it's slower, they can drag that case out. They can make more money. Experience they will. And I have yet to find an attorney who is not as efficient as someone in a more populated state that is more about doing their job right and quickly and doing what's best for you versus what's best for them and making you think it's just the way that it goes.
That it goes, right. Yeah.
And there's some things you can definitely do on your own with like a court clerk. I forget what they're called. They can help you fill out paperwork and file paperwork and see if you've done it correctly, but then you're still chancing that you've filed it correctly as well. Or you can run into situations like I did in a different case where I needed an attorney and I qualified for a free attorney. The state at the time, well, the town at the time was so overflown with domestic violence cases at the time of COVID that I was in a waiting room for the next attorney because they were all so busy. And so he definitely.
What state were you in?
I was in Idaho at the time.
You were in Idaho. And now you've moved out of Idaho?
I am gone. Yes, I am in Utah now. So. But yeah, and then a situation we were talking about, I know a woman who had to flee where she was at and not go back. And in the process of that, crossed state lines, and that backfired against her. But she was in a life-threatening situation, but the judge has not done anything to support that for her. And now she's having to share kids between state lines and even with a newborn and situations that don't make sense for that nursing mom. She has to give up part of her time with a child who's still nursing, almost long enough to lose her milk before she gets. That's not healthy for the kid for anyone. I don't understand that at all. So,
well, you're right, and that's what I mean. By those lawyers, and in general, that's pretty much the way it is across the board. But you're right. I can't say, I don't want to say 100% they're all horrible, because they're not. That's, there are people that went into that industry with a heart to serve people. justice. But they're hard. Like you said, you had to find people. They wouldn't, but even the one that I paid a lot of money to basically threw me to the wolves. I gave him the money, and
some of them have a bias. Like I've even run into counselors who've had a bias against me being a single mom, and wanted, because my ex-husband was, like, it's easier for men to remarry. Sorry, it is. When you're given full custody, and then much easier. And then for some reason, why are you the problem? Because you haven't remarried. And it's like, when?
Right.
I'm taking care of the kids full time here.
Yeah.
I'm the villain of the story because I'm enforcing their responsibility and their part of the relationship, even though they've moved on in a lot of ways. But of course, a 2-parent household would be nicer. That's just not here.
That was what you probably had in mind when you first got started, right?
Right. Well, and divorce too, thinking, okay, this is the wrong relationship. I'm going to go find the other one. So it's frustrating to me to not see credit due where a mom is giving her all for her kids and doing the best for her kids, and somehow it's still not enough because she doesn't have a man supporting her. And let's not also, I ran into this too, that some women were happy even being with a man who wasn't great, just to be with a man. And I'm not settling for that. I'm not okay with that. I'm not just going to be in a relationship to be more acceptable. And what does that teach my girls?
Right.
Like
I
that they should
settle
for whatever relationship to be more acceptable in certain cultures and societies and how some people want to feel. Mm-hmm. That's not what I want for them. And I don't want them thinking they have to be dependent on me. And so
I think that's the right example.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
I not everybody does, but I think that's the right example. I do have friends that do what you're saying, and it makes me very angry. And I'm like, well, don't call me. I mean, like, I don't want to be not a good friend and be like, don't call me and tell me about your issues with your husband. Like, we both know those issues. You knew, you chose it, and you're still there 15 years later.
Yeah.
I know. I get it, but I don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's the good, bad, and the ugly out there for sure in a lot of situations. But what happens? I'm shocked, like, hearing your story. I'm also shocked from another mom who's on here who's telling during COVID, and they never investigated it. They've never found out the truth for her, and she's still seeking justice on that. Like, there are definitely some hands that we were dealt as mothers that are just unfair and biased, unfortunately, and I do think, unfortunately, that, if you have power, you have influence, you have money, it goes a lot further than it should in some cases, because money doesn't buy love. Money doesn't buy attention or nurturing. And money certainly doesn't replace a mother.
No.
By any means. No. Especially a biological mother. That's traumatic, no matter the age. Even in children that are adopted, they are finding now that it doesn't matter if it's right after birth. There is trauma. That child still grew inside the mother for 9 months. And I'm not trying to downplay adoption. I am a mom. There's a beautiful side to that too, but it's something to be aware of. The mother's going to need healing, and the child is going to need healing, and that needs to be factored in. And when a mother goes through a loss like this, so like you have, or whatever kind of loss, it is a huge traumatic loss. It is traumatic. It is not just, let's label that person the bad mom and separate the child, and we've done some good deed. It's never the case. And social workers who have a heart really want to give that parent a chance, or want to investigate if that was the right thing that should have been done or not. And even so, that's another reason, like, I just did a will and trust, because I don't want my children at all to the system or to be put in foster care. I have laid out who has custody, who would be the guardian, and all of those things for that very reason, because I've also heard of horror stories of that this child ends up in the system because there wasn't a will or a trust, or they didn't know who the next family member was in place. And then sometimes they can be found, and sometimes they aren't found and brought back to their family of origin, depending on the state, depending on the laws, depending on the system that's in place. And unfortunately, the systems that are in place do benefit by keeping the numbers up, by having more of the same every year, because it's ran like a business instead of like what it's meant to be. And our welfare system too, bothers me too. And I don't like to get into politics too much here, but I really like my church's system because it moves people towards self-reliance. Everything that I believe in moves people towards using their agency correctly and for good. And it's never okay when someone's agency is completely taken away from them, especially when it has to do with their child. I think that is wrong. And there is definitely a lot more room for improvement on taking the time to evaluate parents and to inform parents, even traveling, what is going on legally. There should be a window, there should be time, there should be space. Because it almost sounds like they knew you were gone and they knew they could take advantage of being gone in a lot of ways. And you didn't know. There's no way for you to know at all. So you're completely blindsided. And I think that's misuse of knowledge. And that's why we have to inform ourselves as much as we possibly can about all of those things. And I've had to do that navigating moving states, navigating that, having different relationships I'm dealing with an ex and my ex-husband, and all sorts of like co-parenting and one not present at all. Like there's all these things I have to take into account. And sometimes I have to do things I don't necessarily want to do, just knowing that, well, not that I don't want to do them, but there are things that I have to do in order to check boxes to keep myself in the suitable parent category that are, that could, as a single parent, I'm always going, okay, well, how is somebody going to perceive what I do? How are they going to look at me as a parent? Can that be used against me? What can I do to make sure that I'm doing my part? For example, I'm supposed to take parenting classes during COVID. Were there any parenting classes going on during COVID? No.
Right, no.
So did I just sit there on my butt and not do something about it? No, I went to my local university and did some family counseling and therapy. I also started doing work as a coach for family and relationships so that I could go, I didn't make the class, but I did do these two other things that would be an equivalent of doing a parenting class. So I knew if that ever came around that went, no, I did this because that wasn't available, which is not my fault. But I don't know if everybody thinks that way, but those are some things that I know.
But you should.
Yeah.
That was smart. Very.
Yeah.
So, everything seemed to be, and I don't like. It's a shocking story. It's a deep story, and it's just, and it goes back to say, what I talked about in the beginning, and having come from the Navy, it all kind of hit me like, eventually when I realized like, it's all, and it sounds so impersonal, and it is for them. It's very impersonal. There's no feelings about it. It's when they say it's just business, they really mean it is just business.
Right.
And so I want to just explain so people understand when I say that the state owns your children before you do. So when I was in the Navy, I was a storekeeper on the aviation side, and so I dealt with parts, just mechanical parts for the airplanes, mechanical parts for the ships. And so everything in this world that I say is the military industrial complex is in a sea. Everything is shipping wars. And so when we as mothers go to a hospital and we give birth, the baby is coming through water, okay? Like a ship would be birthed into water. And when we do the birth certificate is their birth date and their born day are actually two different things. And there's a number on the birth certificate that says that's their, basically like what would be the nomenclature on a ship, right? If I had some kind of part that goes on the ship, that's what identifies it, right? And it's a all capital letter, first, middle, last name. Some people have more than that, right? But technically that's what it is. And those three, we call them words or we call them names together, is actually not a name, but essentially, I mean, it goes deep, but it's like a hieroglyphic, because if there's no dash between them, there's no one-to-one correspondence. And so it's actually sign language and not a name. But that gets like really deep into stuff. But just to say that when you fill out the birth certificate, it's like you registering your car, you're registering your child to the state. And then the state is a sister company of the United States under the United States. Okay, so And then every county within the state, when you're driving through and it says incorporated by or incorporated on such and such a date. Well, what does incorporation mean? It means it's a company, right? And people don't think about it like that. But every courthouse is a bank and every jail is a bank.
Well, it's supposed to work constitutionally in our favor. Like it's supposed to be to protect us and things. But I think there's definitely room for
it went askew. That's all I say.
There's definitely room for improvement, and we need to get back to the basics, but not everyone's informed. Like I was homeschooled, private schooled, and public schooled. So my education when it comes to government and the Constitution is way more in depth than anything that's been teaching now. And if I want the next generation to understand their rights and to understand the way things work, I'm going to have to take the initiative to pass it on and my experience and inform my girls of the things that I've gone through, from bankruptcy to divorce to fighting to get custody settled, to getting child support settled, to just getting out of the system as well. It's all been a major education, and there's definitely room for improvement in a lot of areas. And I think that, there is good intention in some cases because there are children who are abused. There are people that need to inform someone the child is showing up to school with bruises, and the parent does need to be looked at. But when the system goes askew and it's used against a totally healthy, normal, loving parent, and to make them look like they're what they are not, that's where we've gone awry. And we definitely need to stand up for ourselves and for our kids the best that we can. What have you been able to do since then to try to see your child again? And what have been the blockades still that are in the way?
So for 6 years, I had a threat of arrest, basically, if I went to try to even talk to my child. I would be under threat of arrest. If I tried to find out anything, like they literally portrayed me as a kidnapper. Like I kidnapped my own son.
You're on your gate for vacation for more than a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, and so after 6 years of probation, that finally lifted, and I sent him a birthday present on that 7th year. And I don't even know if I sent it to the right house. If I don't know if he got it because his father works for the post office. Mm-hmm. And, I just sent it from Amazon. And because I figured, he might not would get it, if it came, if he knew it came from me, I left it. I mean, he knew it came from me, but if he even got it. So I don't know. But so I would actually have to go. I'm sure I could go back to the state and get some kind of visitation. At this point, it's been 9 years. My son will be 13 in January. And, but that's they want me to live in the state. So if Idaho said, hey, Tiffany, you can do this, but we want you to come back and we want you to live, you can, live wherever, but we want you to live in the state. And you've been put through so much abuse by that state. I mean, they literally tried to make me homeless. Like literally, they made me, I had a house in Florida, a 3-bedroom house that I was paying for. And I went up for a quote unquote quick trial that they put on me. They changed the charge a month before the trial, so that it was originally it's like parental kidnapping, but because that's not really a real thing and that's always been kicked out by Supreme Courts, well, they kept it out of the Superior Court so that they can hold on to it between the district court and the custody court so that they could control it. And then and when I got there, they changed it from parental kidnapping to it was endangering of a child by a relative. So
going on vacation in Florida for more than a couple weeks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that all happened, and you have an attorney, and there's no, is that shared in the court? Was that found out after? Is it just blown off?
Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah. I mean, so my only witness my best friend who's disabled. She's my only, she's always with me 24/7 because she is disabled. And so she saw everything, she heard everything, she knew everything. Well, they sequestered her through the whole trial, and they were supposed to put her on, on the stand. But every person that they called up basically said the same thing that you said, which was, well, how could she possibly have known like that there was a change in custody? There's such a thing as due process. It doesn't matter. In some places it doesn't matter. And so in a lot of places. And then, and even while I was in jail, there's, habeas corpus, and you try to get some help and try to get out of jail so you can do something, just to get out of jail so you can do something. All goes on deaf ears. Nobody hears you. It's like, nobody hears you.
So sorry for all that you've been through. That just hurts my heart. Like, it doesn't seem right that it could go that way.
Yeah. And it's not. And I'm, there's, some cases out there that have had some really like horrific things. And there's a whole lot of people that, that miss their children. And their children miss.
Well, I have a brother who didn't see his child for 7 years because some of the choices that he made. And again, it was across state lines. I think that's a key part of this story is be really careful when you're across state lines and you're not home for a while. I now know, like I do informed mail now, so I don't miss anything, for example. Mm-hmm. And I've made sure to have my mail, I pay for the service to have my mail forwarded for 6 months or whatever, because I worry about that same thing. You could miss something important in the mail. And a few times I've gotten lucky and opened something like 2 days before something's due or they need verification or something. So there are some things in place that maybe you could do now that maybe weren't available years ago, to stay on top of these things and to not be taken advantage of, as it sounds from this point of view of this conversation. And for me, I really hope this podcast will help people to be informed about a lot of different things, but also just not to be able to not be in a situation where you're taken advantage of. In my own life, I've been abused not just by physical means, but it's been by manipulation, by using the fact that I was ignorant about finances or using some other form of lack of my knowledge, because I was raised to get married and stay married and my life is going to be done instead of independent, have my own means, be able to have my own mind, be able to find a partner who really complements me, not just happens to be of the same faith or this should probably work out. Like there has to be a lot more scrutiny with that. And I think that's why there's a lot of divorce today, because we're not in it the way we should be. We're not going for enough depth, and we don't hold on to people. We think that there's more options out there because we're so connected today that we think, it's like the generation. The generation from the Great Depression would hold on to things and make them last. So I've heard that generation talk about what is with this generation today that is just ready to throw something aside instead of work for it, make it work, fix it, and try it. But at the same time, there is a point where if a marriage is dead, a marriage is dead. Abuse is abuse. And so we're in a very complicated world that way. And we need to get back to our hearts, and we need to get back to what's right and standing up for what's right and having integrity and knowing our rights and doing what we can do within our rights and help each other and support each other and to call out a wrong when a wrong's wrong. And to be careful what situations we end up in, because we are not always as safe as we think we are if we are not informed or doing due diligence. So
one of the things I really wanted to bring attention to, we have all that, but honestly, and the reason a lot of it boils down to, and I realized that I brought it on myself, number one, because of, the decisions that I made where I may have ignored red flags that I shouldn't have ignored. So don't ignore those red flags. And one of the other things that really hit me hard, so when I realized that my son's father was almost a perfect combination of my passive aggressive father and my narcissistic mother, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
And so I realized, and then if you're familiar with energy, right? Everything is, according to Tesla, vibration, energy, and frequency, right? And so I had this, if you want to call it a frequency or a vibration, whatever it was, of, and I call it a spirit of rejection and a spirit of abandonment that came from my mother as a
Mm.
very young child,
Mm.
because I knew as soon as I could know, like you go through these subconscious years from literally 6 months in utero to 7 years of age, right? And um, you are just taking everything in. That's that part that you become individualized. You're just literally taking in so much information, and you don't even remember. Obviously, you have bits and pieces of memory as to what has happened during those times, right? And you think you get to this age of, realization, like, man, how did I get through that? Because,
Yeah.
right? Because I mean, my mom would leave me alone in my room, and I can remember like climbing up refrigerators to get to the cookie jar and falling, and you know what I mean? Like seriously. I know that I wasn't I wasn't a bad kid. I was just a very curious child, but she really made it clear that she did not like me,
Mm.
and she did not like me at all. And so she was purposely mean to me and would spoil my sister to pieces. And so
Mm.
my dad had compassion on me, even though he is passive aggressive. He had compassion, but it made my mother more angry. It made her jealous. And so I didn't ever realize any of this until I had my son at 40 years old. And then when she started doing weird things with my son, like if he'd call her mommy by accident instead of Mimi, she wouldn't correct him,
Yeah.
right? And so I realized, so now my son has that same little spirit of fear and abandonment that's going to follow him until it's something that he recognizes, you
Generational
know?
patterns. Yeah.
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 And it doesn't break until you see it. So see it as fast as you can.
Oh, and break it. Yeah,
Break
absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. I've had to see those patterns in my own life and the relationships that I've had. And it's been interesting learning about narcissists. And I recently actually did some research on narcissistic grandparents just because I'm trying to understand what I don't understand, because I am not that way, but I've definitely lived it, and it was my normal for far too much of my life. And now I
Right.
know I don't want that. So I want to make sure
Yeah.
I'm aware of when the manipulation is happening and why. And I was surprised to learn that the narcissistic grandparent wants to get between you and your kid. They will do anything to get in between you and your child and make them the more dominant relationship. They
Yeah.
will, um, it's just because they need that feed from that kid, just like they
Yeah.
need a feed from you. And it's not uncommon to have a golden child and a black sheep child either, but they'll do the same thing with grandkids too. They'll have the
Right.
golden grandkid child, and then they'll have the black sheep grandchild child, or those that child is doing better with their kids and that one is not. And it won't be for logical reasons. It'll just be for whatever reason that they decide is, and spin whatever story they need to spin. And it's rough because you don't want to be like them, and you want them to be able to be a part of your child's life, but you don't want to give them the fuel to make the bullets to use against you either. So it's a
Right.
fine line of walking that. And when you get into relationships like that, you will find yourself in situations where they take advantage of anything you've given them, and
Oh
they'll
yeah.
turn around and use it against you.
Oh
And
yeah.
so it's very important to see those red flags and go right away. Right away. Don't think you're going to fix someone, fill their need, or that them being vulnerable with you means that they're endeared to you.
Right.
They're just
It's all manipulation.
putting that in the back of their mind to use later to get what they want and what they need out of the relationship. It's not about you. It's not about love. It's not about what's best for a child. It is just about them,
It's
sadly.
100%. 100%. Yeah. And the end of that story was that both my parents, my mother and my father, when I walked up into the courtroom that day for the trial, they were there on his side.
Yep.
And my mother got up on the stand and lied. Number one, she was telling me to take my son and get out of the state. And I was like, I'm not going to do that because that's not right. That's not what you do. Right. She was encouraging me to break the law. And I'm like, hell no. Right. But yet she comes drives 4 hours out of her way during a snowstorm, and she has bad knees, not under subpoena, but to walk up on a stand and say that, oh, well, we had a conversation like a week before, whatever, and that I knew that there was a change in custody, and I ignored it. And yeah, that's what she said.
Your own mother didn't tell you?
No, my own mother didn't tell me. And then turned around and stabbed me in the back. And my father sat there like a mouse, as he does, and says nothing because he's whipped by her.
I can relate to some of that too, because yeah, I've had some situations where similar things have happened, where I hear about things that were said about me from other family members, and they're not, some of them are true, some of them are not true, some of them were saying confidence, some were not. And I've just now learned don't give them fuel to do that, because it is easier for them to love someone who is not their child. It is easier for them to side with my ex, thinking that'll be the easier way to get to the grandkids than through me, because they now know to put boundaries up. They now know that I'm aware of things and I won't tolerate certain things, and I've gotten enough independence that they can't manipulate me anymore.
Yeah, no, so, you nailed it. That's what it is
now. And it's really hard to go back to and look and see all of the things that have been done to set me up to fail, because there would be some benefit to someone else, not me, not my kids, but the way it makes them look, or makes, because it's that thing that if no one on this is like narcissist and sick of hearing about narcissists and all this, I think the tall tale sign that I've come to with my experiences, they either want to play the hero or the victim. They either want to be the hero, that they help their grandchild get to the more stable ex, or they want to be the victim of the relationship when you have to gray wall them, or you're not talking to them for a while, or you called them out on something and they play the victim of the relationship. But there's no in between. They're the hero or the victim of every situation, and that's not healthy. And that's I think your tall tale sign that there's a red flag right there and to run. But they're also really good. If they're your family, they know your triggers. They know what works. They also know what feeds you and what soothes your soul, and they'll use that against you. But like when you're dating, they'll try to find out what your holes are and try to fill them for you in that beginning stage, to hook you in and to reel you in. And they're really good at that. And that's why they come across as charismatic and as these great people and these different things. But then when you find out what's actually happening behind closed doors, there's the things that are not talked about. It's a whole different person, and it's a whole different world and relationship. So on the outside, everything can look so good, but it's not. It's all a facade. It's all for show. It's how I learned to be an actress most of my life, is who do I need to show up as today? And then took that into part of adulthood. Did not serve me to just be like, who do you need me to be? Who am I? What do I need? Where are the boundaries I need to set? And how do I find someone who honors who I am? And so I can relate to that in a lot of ways. And now the hard thing too is your son's been away, and then there's not even the co-parenting thing, which is hard enough with a narcissist, but now there's going to be the undoing of everything that's been said that may or may not be true. And is there going to be that relationship? And I felt like that after giving a child up for adoption, and then thinking when they turned 18, we were just going to start having a relationship. When an open adoption turned to a closed adoption because of my family's involvement, acting like they were helping anybody. And now that relationship is strained. It's going to take time, and all I can do, and sometimes all we can do for our children, is love them, even from a distance, and pray for them.
100%.
That's sometimes all we can do. It's unfair. It's very hard. And we talked about this before coming on. You and I understand something that not a lot of people understand about adoption or being separated from your child, is that if they were, and please, people don't take this the wrong way, but when your child dies and they go to heaven, you know they're in a good place.
Yeah.
When your child is separated from you and you're not allowed to know how they're doing, but you feel them, they were a part of your body, they're a part of your heart, and you think about them every day, and you aren't able to be there for them, and whether you want to be there right now or you find out later they needed you and people kept you from them, it's not okay. And it's very traumatic, not just to the child, but to the parent as well. And then there's going to have to be all this healing afterward and room for that. And there needs to be more support for the family unit, for the mom and the
Yeah.
child to be together. It's
Yeah.
the mother-child parent bond. It's unnatural to be separated from your child. It's unnatural. It wasn't meant to be that way. And it's unnatural to go through a pregnancy without the partner. Like, we were meant to be a unit, and we don't always get it right. We're taught what we're taught. We come with those generational patterns, but moving forward and hearing this relation, like our shares, I hope somebody understands to be really careful about who they get involved with. Really take the time to test them out, to see how they interact with their family, test them of they have to always be the center of attention. If they solve problems, if they're true to their word, don't jump in and fall for. I mean, we get the rose-colored glasses and the hormones for the first 90 days. So at least go beyond 90 days before you make any big decisions on anyone, please.
Yes, I agree. Don't jump into any sex, or just hold out and see what happens. Yeah. I mean, that friend I'm talking about, waited 90 days, but wanted to get married right at 90 days. Like, literally want to get married at 90 days and been together 15 years, but she's not happy.
Yeah.
And that makes me sad for her.
A relationship for the wrong reasons either. Like,
right. And she's safe for the kids.
Be happy, and staying for the kids or staying for whatever reason. Because my kids are divorced, I've really worried about this. So anytime I get someone on here who is divorced, or someone says, oh, my parents divorced when I was little, or my parents divorced when I was a teenager, I always ask them about it. And the ones that their parents waited and stayed together for them often have said, I wish they would have done it sooner. I wish they hadn't waited for us to divorce and to get it right.
And I know her kids would say the same thing.
And then I've seen a mom who was brave enough to leave with 6 kids, and a woman who didn't leave with 6 kids. And the woman who didn't leave with 6 kids, the kids are all messed up, to be honest, except for a few. And the mom who was brave enough to leave the relationship and go find love and rebuild her life, even though she didn't get right the first couple times, those kids are all way more successful. They've gone on to get into better relationships, to make sure they have good careers that sustain their family. So, don't underestimate what going through hard things will do for your kids. It'll actually set them up for success if you're the one who's striving to be healthy and do the right things and find the right relationships. If you're setting that example, you're giving them the biggest advantage, more than money, power, influence could ever give them. If you can give them that sense of self and the ability to be true to it and what a healthy relationship looks like, they're going to get really far in the world today, because they won't have to go through the divorce. They won't have to go through tons of therapy. They won't have to struggle with an addiction or something to feed whatever that emptiness is that's created from abuse with them, or the trauma that they have to overcome. You'll give them the safe space to work through those things. And you can start today. Maybe your life feels like a mess. Maybe you are separated from your child, like my friend here, and it's not fair, but someday it can be. But you have to keep working on you to be ready for that day. So when it comes, that you can be there. I long for that. I still haven't had all 4 of my children in the same room yet. I really long for that day. I don't have any idea when that will happen, but I look forward to it. And I in my heart just believe that I'm going to have that someday. I believe I'm going to have a better relationship with my other child. They want to hang out with me and be with me when I'm an adult, when they're adults with me. Like, I have to keep hoping, and I have to keep believing that I can, that I get to choose my attitude through it, and that I can do these things. So,
you're 100% right, Tiffany. That is one thing. There's not much that you can control. I couldn't control any of it. I mean, we would go to court, literally felt like every week, but it probably wasn't. It was probably more like once or twice a month, but it seemed like every week. And I would walk out of that courtroom and I'd be like, every week, and it just seemed like I just would lose. I would lose and I would lose. There was like nothing. They were giving me nothing. And I was like, what is going on? Like, I just cannot wrap my head around it. I'm like, why are people saying this? I'm not
I kind of felt that way the last 5 years in the community I was in. It was like nobody believed me.
I'm like, I'm a veteran and I have medals and accolades, and people are talking, talking to me like I'm some like horrible mother. I literally had hate mail on Facebook. He had a Facebook page of 3,000 people following our story that I stole my son from him. And he had all these hilarious, like pictures in his mom's house, which is this beautiful house, and all these children's toys, because that's where all the grandkids go to play. So she's got the playroom with all the toys, but he's sitting in the playroom like it's his, and those are his son's toys, and I've taken him from him. And so I'm this horrible person. I had hate mail from people that I didn't even know. And it went on for months.
Well, that's the lack of depth in the world today. People really don't get that you need to go deeper than what you see. This fast judgment, do you like this? Do you not like this? Did you go against this person shoot before this person? Our social media is just killing society. It's not getting to know you. It's not getting to know your whole story. It's not going deep on, does a parent, does a mother need a child's relationship? What really happened? Is the father really who he says he is? I mean, ideally, both parents, it's better for the child if both parents are in their life. They have shown 50-50 custody is better for the child in general. But this stuff across state lines that I'm coming across over and over again, it seems to get really skewed between two different laws, between two different states, and who's involved and whose opinion it is. And if it's a liberal state, or if it's a conservative state, or if it's a county that's liberal, or if it's where's the congruency? Where's the consistency in the system to serve the family in general? Is it what it's supposed to be about? Not about who understands the system better or who can take advantage of the other person. That is not what our system was designed to do, but there's room for improvement. There definitely is. We are not there yet. There are a lot of different things that need fixed. There are gaps that need to be bridged for people. There need to be better support systems in place for mothers in general. And that's why I'm here at this podcast. I am here trying to create a voice for women and to share all of our experiences, to support each other so that we can be better, so we can support our children to raise the next resilient generation. And we need to be able to find a way to do that, even in these trying times and even in difficult relationships.
For sure. Well, I appreciate that space, really. I do, because I don't talk about it very much, because it does bring that trauma up to me. I reckon it to, like, picking a scab on your wound. It brings it right back up. And even I went through, a lot of quote unquote therapy. But talk therapy to me, that's what it does. And you can only talk it to someone, I can't let my brain go crazy thinking I should have done this, could have done that. It doesn't matter, and like you said, the only thing that you can control is what you do for yourself. And I had to prioritize myself, because my hands were tied to do anything for my son. And that was horrible to know who he was with, what that person was capable of doing, how he made him feel, how scared he was. It was awful. But I prioritized myself and my health and did what I could to keep myself being able to not be homeless, to be strong, and to take care of, my body, because that's what takes care of your mind. And you can see, when I talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, I had that, some from the military, but that was, I dealt with that. When it's a complex form, it's through the legal system. When they drag you through that legal system, complex is because it just keeps going. You know what I mean? Like normal PTSD is like a quick, kind of like a one-time trauma sort of thing. And then the water keeps the score, your body keeps the score. But there's, through energy healing and therapy like that, I was able to kind of move through that a lot. But the complex post-traumatic stress is much harder, because it's continual, it's like it's continual abuse, basically. So it's much more difficult to get through. So, but it's little things, that will trigger it, and you just work through it, and you do what you can for yourself. And as I said, prioritize your mental health, prioritize your body,
And then one day when the opportunity comes and that child gets to make decisions for themselves, you're still there.
You're still there. That's right. Because that's a whole nother group of people, where you could feel like you would not want to be there, but that doesn't really help. Your story never gets told if you're not there.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't have to tell your story. Eventually, someday the truth will come out. But sometimes you do have to tell your story, and some people don't want you to tell your story, and you need to tell it anyway. You're not the only one. There's somebody else out there that's struggling and could use the wisdom you've gained through the situation that you've been through. So thank you for being vulnerable and for sharing your story so passionately. And you clearly love your son very much. And my heart hurts for you. And I can relate to your pain.
I know.
Probably more than most. And you're doing the right things. You're doing the right work. I've also found EMDR work more helpful than talk therapy. And just thank you, because it takes a lot of courage to just do this in general. And
LinkedIn, at Siannon Lee. They can find me, LinkedIn at Siannon Lee. And, I'm also on Facebook. The things that I do are kind of more in more passive than, one-to-one. I kind of let you, it's all functional, like functional medicine. So I like to get people tested, not just guess. I don't like guesswork. I like people to know, like, hey, this is
gotcha,
because we're all different, and so I would recommend people test, what's going on in their body, so they know where to start. I mean, doctors are guessing, and they're like, here, try this prescription. Well, that doesn't work. Okay, try this prescription. Well, that doesn't work. Okay, try this. And every one of those has 14 different side effects that go along with that.
Yep.
When you try something that's natural, okay, well, if that wasn't it, then you just didn't get the results that you were hoping for. So it could be this too, because certain things like magnesium and potassium and vitamin B1, that's huge when it comes to like mental health and even physical health. Those things all play huge roles in your metabolism. And so many people are so deficient on so many different elements in our body. It's chronic deficiency, really. So many things are chronic deficiency, and people, they just don't know. And because they slap a name on it, like, I think I heard one recently from a girl that I'm connected with, and it's like myopathy or something like that. I'm like, okay, so you have multiple pains. Okay, fair enough. I mean, yeah, that's true, but like, okay, why? You know what I mean? So it's just really getting down to and what's interesting is trauma will actually kick a lot of that off.
Interesting.
Trauma and the stress can kick that off.
Well, that's something we're all dealing with. So it all sounds like we could get some blessings from your wisdom just in that area in these times.
Yeah. So, I say, look, reach out to me, just send me a DM, everything that I'm doing. I'll just, I kind of work with you and tell you, the direction to go in. And it's a self kind of thing. I'll support you and say you're doing the right thing. If you have questions, or like, well, that doesn't sound right, so, you know what I mean? Like, we just work together, we talk together, and that's the way it is.
And moms, you got to put your oxygen mask on first before you can put it on anyone else, no matter what your situation may be with your children.
100%
You've got to fill your cup so you have something to give. And healing is a big part of it. All of us have trauma at this point with what's gone on in the world. So we all have some work to do. And we're really learning that. We're really fighting for our hearts and our minds today. And we hope we gave you some thoughts on that, and just giving you hope that there's no hopeless situation. There is always something that you can do no matter what, especially to let your child know that they are loved by taking care of you. So you're available when the chance comes to be a part of their life in the way that they need you when they're ready. All right. Thank you for joining us today. Please don't forget to subscribe so we can share this message. We are a worldwide podcast with guests all around the world, and we want to continue to grow this community. You can find us on socials. You could also be a guest. Look for that link below if you'd be interested in being a guest on the podcast. If you know a sponsor or would like to be a sponsor, please reach out to me or Catherine as well.
sure we want you all on this journey. We want to hear your stories. We want to share your stories. We want to gain strength from each other because together we're stronger. And to never forget the blessing of being a mother and what we're creating. We're creating the future every single day of our lives. So get on this train with us and let's do this thing, moms.
I believe in you. Believe in yourself. God bless. And we'll see you around. Take care.